Day, grade 12. Welcome to Technical Mathematics. Today's lesson, we are going to be discussing algebra. That is the topic that we are going to be looking at. And then before we can start, remember this topic is formed part of paper 1, and then it contributes 50 plus or minus 3 marks for that paper. So let us make sure that when we revise, we use the previous question paper. And then we also have to have the examination guideline for technical mathematics, and then look in each of the topic that we are doing under technical mathematics. What does that document say about each of the topic, so that we understand what is needed from you before you go and write the final examination. All right, now let's start and see what are we going to be discussing for today's lesson. The content, as I was saying, that we are going to be dealing with algebra, and then I also indicated the marks that algebra have for paper 1 out of 150. It contributes 50 plus or minus 3. So you can imagine that this topic is very, very, very important. So let us make sure that we revise more into this topic for paper 1 and make sure that we pass that paper. And then under algebra, we have the quadratic equations and inequalities. That's number 1. Number 2, we have the simultaneous equations that needs to be revised and then changing the subject, the formula, and the solve. And number 4, we have binary numbers. Remember, binary numbers, we have last did that binary numbers in grade 10. So in grade 11, it was not there. And then even in grade 12, but it's going to be part of the exam. So let us make sure we also revise binary numbers. And then also the nature of roots, and then exponents and sets, logs, and the last one, complex numbers. These are the topic under algebra that needs to be revised before we start writing paper 1. So please let us make sure that we revise everything. We remind ourselves, because majority of this topic, we have done them in grade 10 and some in grade 11. So they were not in grade 12. Remember, in grade 12, we don't have algebra as part of the syllabus, but it's also part of the exam. So it needs us to go back and remind ourselves what we've been doing. All right. All right, let's start and see what are we going to be dealing with for today's lesson. All right, first we are going to be studying solving for x. That's question number 1. Remember, 1.1 for paper 1, it will start with solving for x. So now we are going to be learning on how best can we answer this question of solving for x, and then make sure that we collect all those marks. All right. Now the first question says solve for x plus 3 into x minus 1 equals to negative x plus 1. Now, because this one on the left-hand side, it is factorized, and on the right-hand side, we have negative x plus 1. Then it needs us to reopen the bracket first so that we can bring that negative x plus 1 to the left-hand side, because everything should be on the same side, and then it must be equals to 0. And then let's see. This is the question that we have, and then from there, we just open the bracket, and then it gives us x squared plus 2x minus 3. And then when you transpose that negative x to the left-hand side, it gives us positive x. And then positive 1, you transpose it, it gives us negative 1 equals to 0. Then we can now add the like terms. Let's add the like terms. After adding the like terms, we are having now a standard form, which is x squared plus 3x minus 4 equals to 0. Then when you reach this stage, that's where we now we need to factorize it in order for us to solve the value of x. So the factors are x plus 4 and x minus 1. Then when you solve for x, the first x is going to be x equals to negative 4 or x equals to 1. That's how you should answer the first question. Now the second question says x squared plus 3x equals to 1. And then there's a message next to this question that says correct to do decimal. So every time when you come across such a question that has an instruction next to it of saying correct to do decimal places, it's very, very clear that in this question we don't have factors. So we just have to use the quadratic formula. So, but before we can start using the quadratic formula, remember we need to rewrite this question in a standard form. And then now it's in the standard form by just transposing that 1 to the left hand side, and then that quadratic should be equals to 0. And then you get a mark just to transpose that positive 1 to the left hand side. It's a mark because we'll be putting in the standard form. Thereafter, you write the value of A, B, and C. You can see A is 1, B is 3, and C is -1. And thereafter, you write the quadratic formula for us to solve X. And then from there, the next step, you substitute the values. And then you have the positive 1. So it's going to be -3 plus square root of 13 over 2, or X equals to -3 negative square root of 13 over 2. Then you then write answer. In terms of the decimal, it's going to give us 0.30, and the other one is -3.30, because the instruction was very clear to us that we should correct to 2 decimal place. So if we have such an instruction and then you did not write 2 decimal place, meaning 2 numbers after comma, then you are not going to be reward marks for your answers, because you did not follow the instruction. So let us make sure that we do follow the instruction. And then sometimes we, on the second page of the question paper, we have instruction for the whole paper. And we do have that question, not question, but instruction in those list of instructions. That tells us how many digit number we should write after comma. So if a question does not have its own instruction, then you should follow that one of the question paper. All right. All right, we have another question, and then now look at this one. It does not have equal sign, but it has this sign of less than. Now, meaning in this case, we are dealing with inequality. This is inequality, my dear learners. So I also have to emphasize this inequality, because majority of learners, they don't get it right. So I will try my level best to explain to you on how best can you approach this question. First, you have to factorize it, and then you, in most cases, the inequality, it has factors, so there is no need for you to use the quadratic in this one. Then after giving factors, you write the critical values or critical values. You don't solve for x like if it was an equal sign. For instance, the first bracket is x plus 4. So if you solve for x is going to be -4, but now you don't write x equals to -4, you just write critical values or critical points. CV stands for critical values. And then we have -4 and 1. After having the critical values, you then draw your number line, and then you just put plus or minus plus, plus, minus, plus. Then I will explain that later, why plus or minus plus. And then you just put your values, your critical values according to the number line. You know how this number line works. On the left hand side, we go to negative. On the right hand side, we go to positive. All right. Now, the reason why I put positive next to -4, and then negative between -4 and 1, and positive that side. So it's simply saying that if you take any value after this -4 on the left hand side, -5, -6, any value, substitute where you see x here, the answer that we're going to be getting is going to be positive. And then this one of negative, you take any value between -4 and +1, you substitute where you see x, then you are going to be having a negative value. All right. And then After 1, we have positive. The same applies. You take 2, 3, 8 value, substitute with x, then you're going to have what? You're going to have a positive value. All right. Now, I just want to show you something. So they are saying if we are using this sign without equal sign. Remember, we have this sign, sometimes it has equal sign. But now this one does not have equal sign, it's just a sign like this. So on top of those critical values, we are going to use an open dot. This one is going to be open dot like here. And then we have also open dot on top of this one. All right. Now, let's say you are standing on top of this -4. And then when you look at the left-hand side, you see positive. When you look on the right-hand side, you see negative. Then you have to choose where to go, right? And then the same applies with this one. You look in the left, is negative. You look on the right, is positive. Now you are going to come here. You see these two brackets, they are saying they are less than 0. And you know that anything which is less than 0 must be negative, meaning we are getting inside. We are in between -4 and 1 because we want where this inequality being less than 0, and something which is less than 0 is negative. So if that is the case, meaning when you have to solve this question, the x is going to be between -4 and 1, and then from there you solve it. It is the correct answer for this inequality. Because if you move from -4 and then you go to the right hand side, all those numbers, they are going to be greater -4. Hence you see x is greater -4 because x stands for those numbers which are greater than -4. Then again, this positive, we are moving to the left. How are those numbers less or greater? They are less. So those numbers, they are represented by x, so x is less than 1. So that's how you should now solve this inequality. And we have another one. Let's see. Let me just remove this. All right. X squared plus 2x minus 8 equals greater 0. Let's factorize it. After you factorized it, you write the critical values or critical points is -4 is to +2. Then you draw your number line, you put plus or minus plus always, and then you put your critical values on the number line, right? Now this is now greater, it's not the same as this one because this one was less than. Now if it's greater, and then you are still on top of this -4, greater meaning it must be greater than 0. Anything which is greater than 0 is positive. Then we move to the left, and then here we move to the right. All right, you can see those arrows, they face, they facing each other, and then this one faces this direction and that's one. So if that is the case, then you're going to use or in between when you're solving. This is your answer: x is less than -4 or x is greater 2. Why x is less than -4? Because if you move from -4 to the left hand side, you are going to have -5, -6, -7. Those numbers, they are less than -4, and then they are represented by x, so x is less than -4. And then here at 2, you go to the right, you get 3, 4, 5. Those numbers, they are greater than 2, and hence you see x is greater than 2. So that's how you should answer the inequality. All right, solve for x. We are now having another question. So how do you go about this one? Now, the first question says x into 2x minus 2 close bracket equals to 4. Now this one, we need to reopen the bracket because if the right hand side is not equals to 0, for instance, okay, if it was 0, then we will just say x equals to 0 and x equals to 1. But now it's not 0 there, is what is 4. So we need to take that 4 back to the left hand side. So but first we need to open the bracket. This is going to help, and then we transpose your positive 4 to the left hand side, and as you see it's -4. Thereafter you can now factorize it. But even if you don't start factorizing, just to simplify it, you can divide throughout with 2, then it's going to be simplified. But okay, it's fine. Then this is the factors for that question. Then from there you solve the x equals to 2 or x equals to -1. right? And then next question number 2 is still what we have there is inequality. And then now this is the question for inequality. First, we need to reopen the bracket and then take everything to one side. And then after opening the bracket, we have now 2 minus x squared plus 5x. And you transpose everything to one side, and then it's going to give us positive x squared minus 5x minus 4 minus 2. Let's add those two, they give us negative 6. So now the quadratic is less than or equals to 0. And from there you factorize. Let's factorize it. Is x minus 6, x plus 1 less than or equals to 0. And then from there you solve you write your critical values. And then your first critical value is 6 and the second one is negative 1. Thereafter you draw your number line, you put plus or minus plus always, and then you then put your critical values according to the number line. You know how does it work? Yeah, right. And then from there we are on top now. Remember this one, it has equal sign. So if this sign it has equal sign, we are using a closed dot on top of your critical values. Now on top of this one is a closed dot, and then sorry, let me just fix this one. Retro it. We just make a dot there, closed dot, and then on top of this 6 is a closed dot again. And then they're saying this is less than or equals to 0. We know everything which is supposed to be less than 0, it must be negative. And hence we get inside, and then we get inside. And we know when you get inside, if your arrows are facing each other, you are going to put x in between -1 and 6, and then from there you solve. So that is the answer. And then from -1, if you go to the right, those numbers they are greater. Hence we see x is greater or equals to -1. 6, you take this, they are less. X is less than or equals to 6. So that's how you should solve the inequality questions. All right, solve for x. We have another question on the solution. Now look at this question. It looks similar to the previous one that we just did, but now remember it was equals to 4, and then we had to open the bracket and bring that 4 on this side. But now this one is now equals to 0. If this is the case, then you don't have to open the bracket, but just to solve for x straight. Then if x is going to be equals to 0, x minus 3 equals to 0, and then the x equals to 3. So that's how you should solve x on this one. And this one, and then number 3, 3x squared minus 2x minus 10 equals to 0. Correct to decimal place. Remember, it's a quadratic. The value of a we know is 3, the value of b is -2, the value of c is -10. You just substitute your values there. Then you press your calculator. This is what you're going to be having. And the last one is 2,19, and then -1,52. So that we have corrected to 2 decimal place there for quadratic. All right, another question. The first one, x squared minus 5x minus 6 minus this. Then let's see. Do we have factors? Yes, we do have factors. Let's get factors, which is x minus 6, x plus 1 equals to 0. Then the value of x is x equals to 6 or x equals to -1. That's the first one. Number 2, we have x into x plus 2 equals to 5. Correct to this month. Remember what I said. If you have a question like this one in number 2, that is having instruction next to it, then you must know the quadratic. But before we can now use the quadratic, we need to reopen the bracket and bring that positive 5 to the left. Let's open it. This is what now it is in the standard form. We can be able to see what is the value of A, B, and C. And from there you substitute your values. Then from there you separate them. Remember, we have plus or minus. The positive one is give us 1,45, and the negative one give us -3,45, right? The third question, we have this one, square root x plus 3 equals to 1 plus x. Now, if we are solving for the value of x and then the x is inside the square root, then the only way to solve that x is to get rid of that square root. And the only way to get rid of the square root, we need to square both sides. Let's first do that. Let's square both sides. Then after squaring both sides, the square root is gone. We are only left with x plus 3 equals to now. Remember, on the right hand side, we are having 1 plus x all squared. And that is going to give us 2 brackets. Then we're going to multiply using a FOIL. Then it's going to give us x squared plus 2x plus 1. Then we take everything to one side. Like we see 0 equals to x squared plus x equals to 2. Then we factorize it. And then we have the values of x. X is not equals to 2 or x equals to 1. No. Now, why x will not be equals to -2? Because if you take -2 and then you substitute where you see x, and then in this end, the left hand side is not going to be equal to the right hand side. Hence, we are saying x should not be equals to -2 because that -2 does not give us a solution. It's only a positive 1 that gives us a solution. If you take 1, for instance, you put 1 here, 1 plus 3 is 4, square root of 4 is 2. And then if you put 1 here, 1 plus 1 is 2. So 2 equals to 2, all right? All right, the inequality again, we have factorized it. And then after factorizing it, you then write the critical values, critical points, 1/2 and 3. Then you draw a number line, you put plus or minus, plus, you put your number, your critical points according to number line, and then the answer is going to be this. Why? Because they're saying this is greater or equals to 0. Anything which is greater, it must be positive. Then from here, you move to positive. From here, you move to positive. So if your arrows are not facing each other, then you're going to use what or in between, all right? So that is the inequality. Solve simultaneous x and y. Very, very important question. Then the equation 1, let's see, we have equation 1, which is 2y plus x equals to 3. That is first equation. Equation 2, y equals to x squared minus 3. And then from there, what you do, you're going to substitute y. So in this one, there is no need for us to create a third equation because already when you see a second equation, already y is the subject, meaning we are going to substitute equation 2 into equation 1. Where we see y, we're going to substitute with x squared minus x. Let's do that. This is what we did. And then from there, you open your bracket, you add the like terms. Now it is in the standard form, which is 2x squared minus x minus 3 equals to 0. And then from there, you factorize it. You then get the values of what? The values of x, which is x equals to 3 over 2 or x equals to -1. Now, for you to be able to get y corresponding values, you first want to take the first value of x, which is 3 over 2. You either substitute it into first equation or the second equation, but I always advise learners that use the second equation or the third equation if you do have, where y is the subject of the formula. You don't need to transpose, meaning you just substitute the x there, you press your calculator. But now, if you had to use the first equation, you're going to substitute x there, and then you have to transpose, and again, you have to divide with 2. So you might make a mistake in the process. So to be in the safe place, you just substitute x there, and then press calculator. And then from there, you also substitute -1 here and there, and then you have the values of y, the values of y. Y equals to 3 over 4, and then other x y equals to 2. So that's how you should solve the simultaneous equation. So it's very, very important, the simultaneous, because I think the minimum marks for the simultaneous, it could be 5. So let us make sure that we collect all those marks for simultaneous. You just need to understand the procedure. How do you start and how do you finish it? All right, the first question, we have negative 2x into x plus a into 3 minus x equals to 0. So if it's equals to 0 and it has been factorized, so there is no need to open the bracket. You just have to solve the value of x. The first is going to be x, and negative 2x equals to 0, or x plus a equals to 0, or 3 minus x equals to 0. And from there, we have x equals to 0, x equals to negative a, or x equals to 3. All right. 3. Correct decimal place quadratic formula, but we need to rewrite it in a standard form. And now it is in the standard form so that we can be able to see what is the value of a, what is the value of b and c. And then we know a is 1, b is 2, and c is negative 6. Then from there you write the correct formula for quadratic, and then from there you substitute the values, and then this is what we are having. Now we're going to separate this plus or minus. Then after you have 1,65 equals to, and then other one is negative 3,6. Negative 3,65. All right. Solve for x again. On the left hand side, we can see we have two binomials equals to 6. So if it was equals to 0, then we'll just solve for x and say x equals to 2 or x equals to negative 3. But now it's number next to on the right hand side, I mean 6. So we need to reopen the bracket and then bring that positive 6 to the right hand side. And then from there, you are now having a standard form, which is x squared plus x minus 12 equals to 0. You then factorize it. You should factorize it. Then after you factorized it, you solve the value of x. X equals to negative 4 or x equals to 3. Number 2, I mean, we are having x equals to square root of 2x minus 1 plus 1. All right. Now this one, you can see that what we are in need of, which is x, is inside what is inside the square root now. Now, before we can square both sides, remember I said when we are having a square root, and then what we need is inside the square root, we need to square both sides. Make sure that on that side where you see the square root, anything which does not inside the square root, you are moving it. Let's see. Yes, we are going to transpose this positive 2 to that side before we can start squaring. Now, if this is the case, we can now start squaring. Then we square both sides. And then now this side we're going to apply FOIL, we multiply to give us x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals to 2x minus 1. Then you bring everything to one side, and therefore you add the like terms. Then now it's in the standard form, which is x squared minus 6x plus 5 equals to 0. Then you start factorizing it. Then you solve the value of x. But now x should not be equals to 1, or x should not be equal x equals to 5. Why 1? Because if you substitute 1 where you see x, the left hand side is not going to be equals to the right hand side, right? It's only 5 where you put 5 on the left. Then where you see x, that is going to make the left hand side equals to the right hand side. The first one, what you see there, this is the question that we are having. So for x, you can see we have a factor. I mean, common factor there is x, and then after taking x as a common factor inside the bracket, we have a quadratic that needs to be factorized, and then we do have factors. After factorizing it, we then solve for the value of x. It's going to be x equals to 0, x equals to 5 over 6, or x equals to negative 1 over 2. That's number 1. And then this one, we need to reopen the bracket because 5 is equals to 5. And then we should bring that 5, and then now it is in the standard form. We can, because it does not affect us, we go straight to quadratic. And then you just substitute, then you have the values. 1,45 and then negative 3,45. All right. Simultaneous again, equation. There we have two equations. Let's see. Equation 1, x plus y equals to 2. Equation 2, x squared plus y squared equals to 4. And then you can see this one, it needs us to create a third equation. And then now we have created the third equation from equation 1. As you can see, we just transpose positive x to the right hand side, it gives us negative x there, right? And after we have created the third equation from 1, we then substitute equation 3 to 2, right? Where you see y, we're going to substitute with 2 minus x. Let's do that. That's what we did. And then from there, you just open your brackets. And then please make sure that you add correctly there. You add the like terms. Now it is in the standard form. You can also divide with 2 to simplify it, because 2 into 2, it goes, and then even in 4 and 30 there. And then from there you factorize it, and then you solve x. X equals to 5, x equals to negative 3. Now just after receiving the x values, you then substitute to the third equation, because already y is the subject of the formula. So you take 5, 2 minus 5 is minus 3, that's number 1. Then you take this negative 3 there, is 3 plus 3 is 5. Then the value of y equals to negative 3, and the one is positive 5. All right. All right, and some others we will make x the subject. Is fine. You can also make x the subject of the formula to create the third equation. You can have something like this: x equals to 2 minus y. It's still fine, but we are going to have the same solution. All right. All right, now we are under nature of roots. Let's see, under nature of roots, you must be able to know this table when you're dealing with nature of roots. It's very, very important. When a delta is greater 0, what is really happening? It's real in unequal rational roots. And then when delta is also greater, but now it is not a perfect square. Remember, we have a perfect square such as 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 49. So those are perfect square, and then but they are still greater 0. We also have numbers which are greater 0, but they are non-perfect square, such as 2, 3, 5, 7. You see. And then when delta is equals to 0, what is happening is real, equal, rational. And then when delta is less than 0, its roots are non-real. Now let's get an example and solve. Example: determine the value of p. Will the equation this have non-real? So you must be able to know under non-real what is happening with the delta. You can see in this case delta is less than 0. So that's how we're going to use to solve. Now first we need to rewrite this in the standard form. And then you minus, you add the like terms. Now it is in the standard form. You can be able to see the value of a, b, and c. The value of a is 3, the value of b is negative 9, and then c is negative p. And then from there you write the formula for the delta, you substitute and you simplify it, and then you have 81 plus 12p. But because delta is where delta is less than 0, you just put delta there, and then from there you transpose, you solve value of p, you simplify, and then p is less than or equals to p is less than minus 3 over 2. That is the value of p. All right. We have another one, delta, the nature of roots, determine the value of d for which this equals 0 has equal roots. And then there's the solution. You have this one, and then from there a equals to 5, b equals to 6, c equals to c, is equals to negative d. Right. Solve the delta. Now it has equal roots. Where does equal is here? You can see there's equal here. So we don't have anywhere you can see equal. So that's where delta is equals to 0. Then after solving this, we then say delta is where delta equals to 0. And then we start substituting your delta, because we have determined the delta, which is 36 plus 20d, which is this one, equals to 0, you solve the value of d, then you simplify it, give us -9/5. All right, that is the nature of roots. All right, now we are now under complex numbers. We are going to be discussing complex numbers. Then we are giving a complex number, and this one I think it is in the form of rectangular form, where complex number equals to -2 plus I. Then we need to calculate the modulus first, and then we also calculate the argument, and the last one expressed in a polar form. That's number one. That's the third one. Now let's see on how do we calculate the modulus. This is the formula to calculate the modulus, the value of R. And then it's very clear from this one, we know A is -2, B is 1. Then we are going to substitute the values. Then we have our modulus, or the value of RS square root of 5. Then we have to calculate what? The argument. Then now the argument is, it will be very simple for you if we can have what? If we can first draw roughly the terminal arm. Where will the terminal be according to this? You can see A is -2. That's -2, that is the point, and then +1, and then you can see X is -2 on the second quadrant, and then Y is positive on the second quadrant. So our terminal arm, it is on this second quadrant. You can see our terminal arm, it is on the second quadrant, and we all know that on the second quadrant, according to the reductions, we have 180 minus, hence we see 180 minus there. So you are just going to put 180 minus, and then please, when you substitute the value of A and B, remember we have what? We have tan. Let me just write it here. We have tan, second function, B over A, right? We always put as a negative, right? We put it as a positive, I mean. We ignore the negative sign. Remember, it's negative there, but here it's positive. You can see it's +2, but it was negative. So we ignore the negative sign. That is going to give us that actual angle, which is 153,43 degrees. That is the angle. And then now express it in a polar form. You just substitute the value of R, which is equal to 5, and then the theta is 153,43 degrees. And then now we are giving in terms of what? In terms of polar form. We need to express this in a rectangular form. We must write the conjugate as well. And then let's see on how do we express this in a rectangular form. First, you need to write it like this, and then we then substitute theta. Remember, pi over 4, it is in terms of radians. It is in terms of radians, but we know that pi is equivalent to is equals to 180 in terms of degrees. So 180 over 4 equals 45. You can see, hence we're having 45 here. And then the value of R, you can see is 4. Then you press your calculator and then say cos 45, it gives us square root of 2/2. And sin 45, it gives us square root of 2/2. Then you open bracket with this +4 outside, then it's going to give us this. Now it is in what? It is in a rectangular form. Number 2, you write down the conjugate. Let's write the conjugate. The conjugate, you just change the sign of this I. The sign of this I. Hence we see -2 square root of 2i. So just change the sign. So that's how it is simple. It's very simple to write a conjugate. All right. And then solve equation with the complex numbers with 2 variables. Solve for x and y. Then we are going to be solving x and y using the complex. And then from there, this is what we're having. Then what is the procedure here? You always equate those that does not have I. For instance, 8 and this one does not have I. You are going to equate them together. Let's see. Yes, you say 8 equals to 4x. Then from there you solve for x, which is 2. Then you take those that has I. And then from there you're going to divide both sides with 3i. And then it gives us y is equals to 2. So that's how you should solve this question. It's very, very simple. And then another one, and then this one, what we have to do, we need to reopen the bracket first before we can now equate those that have I, those that does not have I. Now let us reopen the bracket, and then remember, I squared is is equivalent to -1. So hence you see -1 there. Yes, -1 in the place of I squared. Then from there, this is what we're going to be having. Then after reaching this stage, you can now start equating. And then from there, it's going to be x equals to 34. Y equals to -12i divided with I. Then it gives us y as -12. So that's how you should answer this question. All right, thank you very much for being with me on this very interesting lesson. I hope everything that we've discussed or touched is going to help you in preparing for this coming final exam. And then let's hope everything's going to be in place. And then let me just leave you with this very interesting word that says, study like there's no tomorrow, because if you keep putting off your studies for tomorrow, you will be probably late. So let us study as soon as now and make sure that we prepare ourselves thoroughly. All right. All right. Thank you very much. See you on the next lesson. Bye.